What's up, everybody? It's Soren Baker here on Unique Access Entertainment. As always, please hit that subscribe button. It's right down there and it's free. That enables us to keep coming to y'all as often as possible with as many interviews as possible, as many commentaries like these as possible, and as many of the episodes of The Great Debaters as possible. So please hit that subscribe button. It's right down there and it's free. And of course, if you're watching the 1st and 15th, those who join, that button is right there. It's right next to it, next to the subscribe. If you hit that, then you can get some of the content that we get early. And we're also working on some other things that we want to be bringing to the channel here on Unique Access Entertainment. So if you could join, there's 3 different tiers, one starting up $1.99 and a little other ones up a little bit more than that. But if you could help us in that way, that really helps us behind the scenes as we're trying to build and bring and do different things with the channel. Now, today for the 1st and 15th, there's so much going on in the world all the time. And one thing that I loved growing up as a kid was shoes. And I didn't get to have that many, and I didn't get to have that many nice ones, or really the ones I wanted for a variety of reasons. But, we got the Air movie that's out recently. And of course, there's a long lineage of rappers talking in detail about their shoes. And that made me want to do this episode of the 1st and 15th of some of the most noteworthy songs that mention, discuss, or talk about shoes in detail. And several of them, of course, have songs in the title, have shoe names in the title. So without further ado, let's get into my favorite rapper, because most people think that my Adidas was the first song that really was like this, but it wasn't. That title, to my knowledge at least, goes to Schoolie D, my favorite rapper. Now, Schoolie D, I talk about him at length in my book, The History of Gangster Rap. Looking forward to his album coming out hopefully sooner than later. But if we take it all the way back to 85, keep it live in that regard, Put Your Feelers On by Schoolie D. Now, this song, unlike most of the songs I'm going to discuss, is a little different because the name of the song is Put Your Feelers On. But in the song, Schoolie D doesn't talk about his affinity for Fila. It's more he just says that in the chorus and he talks about having them. But the thing that I remember about this back when the song was coming out, when I was a young youth back in the day, as the Wu would say, the thing was I couldn't afford Feelers. My parents weren't going to buy me any, and I was a real little kid. I wasn't even a teenager when the song came out. So there was no way back in the day I was going to be able to afford some Feelers, because they were, at least at that time, very expensive. And at least in my area where I grew up in Maryland, the people that had Feelers were into the street pharmaceutical business that were also in the rap area, I guess you would say. So they were definitely unachievable, unattainable for me. But Schoolie D is my favorite rapper. He's rapping about them. And then on occasion, he would wear Feelers stuff. So I was like, man, that's something that hopefully one day I can get some Feelers. And it took me many, many, many moons, and not until very recently did I end up getting some Feelers. But I'm glad that I did. And of all things, now I see that they're, or at least the boxes I have when I bought them, they're based in Maryland, which is an amazing 360 full circle moment for me. So that's pretty awesome. But really, that to me, to my knowledge, is the first song where the rapper is saying the shoe name in the title and making a big deal that he's wearing these shoes. So that was groundbreaking to me. And it also showed that this was something that I was going to pay attention to, because most famously in 1986, the following year on Raising Hell, Run-DMC had My Adidas. And that, of course, was one of the biggest songs on Raising Hell. Not as big as Walk This Way, of course, but DMC starts it off talking about walking through concert halls, Coliseum floors, all this different types of things, and how it makes a mean team. And unlike Schoolie D, who was just saying put your feelers on, wear feelers, Run-DMC, Run and DMC throughout My Adidas are actually talking about wearing them. Of course, Run talks about not having any shoestrings in them, and that they make DMCs, talking about how they make the illest team and wear him when he rocks the beat. So all that to be said, Run-DMC took a much different approach than Schoolie and really rapped about certain aspects of them. And of course, Run-DMC famously became known for not wearing shoestrings and sticking out the tongue of the shoe when they were wearing them. And that was a fashion statement and something that they did, for several years. And of course, this helped lead to Run-DMC getting their Adidas sponsorship, because the song My Adidas blew up so much because it was on Raising Hell, etc., 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 and it became synonymous with Run-DMC and Adidas, which is amazing. Now, the following year, in 1987, Heavy D and the Boyz came out with Living Large, and they had their song Nike. Now, the My Adidas song had blown up and done so well that on Living Large, Heavy D and the Boyz put Nike as the second song. So they definitely wanted people to hear it. And the craziest thing about Nike is that if you didn't know better, you would maybe understandably think that toward the end of the song, like Heavy D's shouting it out like it's an ad. He goes on full on ad mood, like run to the store, go get a pair. So it's like, was this an ad? Was it not an ad? Regardless, I really liked it. And, as you go and look back at the credits, it's co-produced by Teddy Riley, which I thought was amazing, given all the great stuff that Teddy Riley, of course, went on to do and had already done. And on the cover of Living Large, the Boyz are wearing Nike jackets. So it wasn't just about the shoes. It was about the whole line of athletic apparel that Nike had. But of course, Heavy D throughout the song Nike is shouting out the different colors that he wears and the different combinations that he likes. And in particular, very early to the game, Heavy D was shouting out the white on white Nikes, which of course became synonymous throughout rap history as one of the most recognized pair of shoes, I would say, arguably in rap history. But we'll get to more of that later, of course. Now, moving on the following year, so we got all these songs back to back. 85 is Cooley D, 86 Run-DMC, 87 Heavy D and the Boyz, and now in 1988, Busy B, comes through with Converse from his Running Things album. Now, Busy B and I talked a little bit about this in my interview with him. There's the link right up there. Check that out if you haven't already. But yeah, man, Busy B was talking about Converse, and what I liked about his song is that he referenced Bird and Magic, like saying choose your weapon, throwing back to their campaign that really was taken off because Larry Bird and Magic Johnson at the time were the two faces of the NBA, and they had their different shoes. And then, of course, Magic had the gold and the purple for the Lakers, and then Larry Bird's were like, I don't think they weren't really black, but they were super dark and white to kind of, even though they weren't green like the Celtics, it was more Celtics-y colors. And that was exciting to hear Busy B shouting it out, talking about Dr. J had also worn Converse, and Busy B also did a little bit of historical stuff, tracing back the lineage of Converse a little bit. And, I just thought that was cool. Like Heavy D, he made a kind of an ad like Converse will make you legit and all these different things. And he actually dissed Adidas and Pony, which I thought was interesting because I always wondered, and I didn't ask him, which I should next time, was that a diss at Run-DMC? Was that just because he just wanted to shout out Converse? I always thought that was intriguing and odd, but it is what it is. So as we move on, the next year, 1989, we have the Geto Boys with Read These Nikes. Now, unlike every song that I've mentioned other than Put Your Feelers On, Read These Nikes is really like Put Your Feelers On. It's really just the chorus. It's not necessarily about reading Nikes, but it's more about Willie D laying a smackdown and stomping on a dude. And then, he's going to be reading these Nikes as if he's going to be reading the bottoms of Willie D's shoes as he gets stomped on. So I always thought that was hilarious. But, as a kid, as I'm growing up, as I'm getting older, and now being, a teenager in 1989, I was starting to see, understand, and be like, oh, wow, they got all these different rappers that are making these songs about shoes that I thought was pretty cool. But at least for me and the interest level and the different things as we get into 1990 and moving more into, what was going on in rap at the time, we kind of got away from this trend. But to me, it really came back in full effect, in full force, really thanks in large part to, drumroll please, our boy Nelly with Air Force Ones. Now, this was on Nellyville, which came out in 2002, produced by Track Boys. Of course, they need two per. So they were like, shouting out the St. Louis accent and stuff there. But, Murphy Lee, Ali, and K1 are on the song too. But, Nelly starts it off and is talking about how serious it was that he almost, shot the dude that touched his shoes. So that made me think of the Radio Raheem back in the days from Do the Right Thing. But then also Murphy Lee was shouting out Foot Locker, which for me growing up and all the people, at least in Maryland, Foot Locker in Baltimore, D.C., Annapolis, all of our areas where we would go, like Foot Locker was huge. So when Murphy Lee was shouting that out, not only was that something I still enjoyed doing at the time, going to Foot Locker, but as a kid, it was like, man, I wish I could get more stuff out of Foot Locker because that's where they had all the good shoes. And I also like that Murphy Lee, was talking to the girl and she was telling him the blue and white. And so he took the suggestion and that was just kind of cool to hear that. Ali shouting out the Broncos with the orange and blue. And Nelly, later in one of his other verses talking about how he doesn't want to scuff them. So Air Force Ones was really, this homage to, what we would see of the Air Force Ones, which I think are the most synonymous shoe in rap history, or with rap, I should say, in the genre's history. Now, Ali at the end of Air Force One also shouts out Puma and Shell Toe. So we have a nod to the Shell Toe, which is what the Run-DMC shoes that they helped make famous, or at least popularize, were. But also shout out to Pumas, MC Shan way back in the day. He's another friend of the channel. You can check out one of my interviews with MC Shan right there. MC Shan was synonymous with Puma, and of course, a lot of the B-boys in particular wore their suede Pumas as they were doing, all their different phenomenal moves that they did. So I really liked that aspect of it, and I thought it was cool. And then the following year, Atmosphere on Seven's Travels, they had a song called Shoes. And on there, it's not really that much about the shoes in the manner which all the other songs I described are, but they Slug does at the beginning of the song reference my Adidas, and that caught my ear back when Seven Travels came out and I was first hearing shoes, because I was like, oh, okay. And then he does kind of, even though it's in the shoe reference, he does reference Busy B, even though he's not talking about the rapper. If you take it literally as to what he's referring to, I always thought it was also a reference to Busy B, which of course I appreciate given my affinity for Busy B, as you can tell. Now, fast forward a couple years from there, we get the Pack and their Bass Boys album. They had the Vans song. Now, this one I thought was really interesting because this is, a hyphy song. This is a song talking more about skateboardiness type of things and how they weren't sneakers and they were like proud of these shoes and all this stuff. And that I thought was kind of interesting. Plus, they were dissing Nikes, telling people to throw them away and all this type of stuff, which I thought was weird and interesting all at the same time, given Nike's popularity. But I guess that's the kind of the counterculture thing that not only hyphy represent, but rap represents, and also, being cool represents, I guess, per se. But then, like Busy B, the Pack gives a brief history lesson on Vans and talk about how they were breaking in. But then, they also talk about caring for the shoes, which is why they want to get black on black, because those, of course, are harder to get dirty. But, this is all part of what makes these songs so interesting. And then they end the song talking about they're flyer than a spaceship thanks to their Vans. So that song I thought was awesome and really cool, and a very different type of approach, because it was much less toward a traditionally athletic basketball type of shoe that we had heard basically throughout rap history. Vans was decidedly different from the Pack. Now, another song I wanted to reference, here on the 1st and 15th, was Mac Miller from his Kids project with the Nikes on My Feet. Now, the thing that's interesting to me about Nikes on My Feet from Mac Miller is that he samples in there Nas saying my Cypher Complete with Nikes on My Feet from The World Is Yours from Illmatic back from 1994. And that to me was so cool in the sense that Mac Miller, to his way of thinking, was referencing a song that wasn't about shoes, but he's using that to build his own song about shoes, because I'm talking about specific songs, but of course there are hundreds, if not thousands, of references to different types of shoes in rap history. But from 1985 to then 2010 with Mac Miller with Nike's on My Feet, we see this huge gap of 25 years, but also Mac Miller dipping back 15 years in essence to go get something from Illmatic to put on his album. And that to me just shows the greatness of, this puzzle that rap is, that I love so much, that if you look at it and the samples and these different things where they come from, at least for me, I always got an extra layer of enjoyment out of it because it's like a puzzle. And the more you know about the puzzle, the more you can enjoy, appreciate, and understand the artistry that goes into all of this music that, in my opinion, makes it so phenomenal. So, that's it. I mentioned a bunch of songs. Of course, there are others, so hit me up in the comments section. Any songs that I mentioned you particularly like, or other songs I didn't mention that you wanted to shout out. I'd love to hear from you about them. So, as always, man, I really appreciate the support here on Unique Access Entertainment. The subscription button's right down there. If you haven't already hit that, it's free. Please tell a friend so we can get these numbers up. And then, of course, if you haven't already, please join. We need to get our membership up so we can try to launch some of these other initiatives that we're working on behind the scenes here on Unique Access Entertainment. Please, please, please comment, like, subscribe, share, and tell a friend about us here on Unique Access Entertainment. I'm Soren Baker. Until next time, it's the 1st and 15th.